The sound of a debit card swiping cut through the silence like a knife. $68.43. That's what it cost Rita Chen to change a dying man's life. But in that moment, standing at Register 7 in a Cleveland grocery store on a cold Tuesday evening, she had no idea she was doing anything more than helping a stranger buy bread and milk. She had no idea that the well-dressed man with trembling hands was fighting a battle no one could see. She had no idea that every single person in that store had already judged him, convicted him, decided he was running some kind of elaborate con. She had no idea that her single act of kindness would ripple out in ways that would touch thousands of lives. And she definitely had no idea that 4 days later, everything she thought she knew about that moment would be turned completely upside down. This is the true story of what happened when a cashier chose compassion over convenience, when a wealthy stranger's dignity hung by a thread, and when an entire store learned a lesson they would never forget. Before we dive deeper, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you're about to hear one of the most powerful true stories about human kindness and hidden struggles that I've ever come across. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now, let's get into what really happened that night. His shoes caught everyone's attention first. Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine, the kind you see in magazines advertising watches that cost more than a car payment, not in a Tuesday evening grocery line at Morrison's Market in suburban Cleveland, Ohio. Then there was the coat. Cashmere, draped perfectly over shoulders that carried the kind of confidence that comes from years of success, the kind of posture that announces you've never had to worry about whether your card would decline at a register. The watch on his wrist caught the fluorescent lights overhead, a subtle gleam of gold that probably cost more than most people in that store made in 6 months. Everything about him said money. Not new money that announces itself with logos and flash and desperation to be noticed. Old money. The kind that whispers through every carefully chosen detail, every perfectly tailored seam, every understated but unmistakably expensive accessory. It was 7:30 on a cold February evening, the kind of Midwest winter night where the temperature drops fast after sunset and everyone just wants to get home, get warm, get dinner on the table and maybe watch something mindless on TV before bed. The store was busy but not packed, that sweet spot between the after-work rush and the late-night stragglers. Checkout lines snaked back 3 or 4 people deep. Tired faces everywhere, people scrolling through phones with that glazed expression that comes from a long day of work, customers shifting their weight from foot to foot, sighing at delays, the universal body language of people who'd rather be literally anywhere else. Nobody was really paying attention to anyone around them, locked in their own worlds, their own problems, their own exhaustion. Until he walked in. You couldn't help but notice him. He stood out like a diamond in a drawer full of quarters, like a Ferrari in a parking lot full of minivans. He moved through the aisles with the ease of someone accustomed to being noticed but not particularly concerned about it, picking items with deliberate care, reading labels like he had all the time in the world while everyone else was racing against their own exhaustion and obligations. His movements were precise, controlled, the kind of body language that suggested decades of discipline and success. He examined produce like he was choosing investments, turned cans to read nutritional information, compared prices even though his appearance suggested price was the last thing he needed to consider. His cart was modest though, which struck a few observant shoppers as odd, creating a disconnect between appearance and behavior that human brains naturally find suspicious. No prime cuts of beef, no expensive wines with French names, no imported cheeses or organic specialty items from the fancy section. Just basics. Bread, the store brand. Milk, regular 2%. Eggs, a dozen. Some vegetables, nothing exotic, just carrots and broccoli and a bag of potatoes. Chicken breast, the value pack. Canned soup. Tea bags. Cold medicine. Nothing that screamed wealth or luxury. Nothing that matched the shoes or the coat or the watch. One woman nudged her husband in the produce section and tilted her head toward the well-dressed man examining tomatoes like he was choosing diamonds for an engagement ring. "Look at him," she whispered, her voice carrying that particular tone of judgment mixed with curiosity that people use when they're trying to figure out if something is wrong with a picture they're seeing. "What's someone like that doing shopping here? Why isn't he at Whole Foods or some fancy place?" Her husband shrugged, not particularly interested in the shopping habits of strangers, but she kept watching, her eyes following the man through the store, curiosity sharpening into something else, maybe suspicion, maybe envy. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. When the man finally joined the checkout line, it was lane 7, where a woman named Rita Chen had been working since 2 that afternoon. Rita was 46 years old, a cashier for the past 12 years at Morrison's Market, one of those employees who becomes part of the furniture, reliable and steady and always there when the schedule says she should be. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, a style she'd worn for years because it was efficient and she didn't have time or energy for anything more elaborate. Reading glasses perched on her nose, attached to a beaded chain her daughter Hannah had made in middle school art class years ago. The bead slightly faded now, but Rita wore it every single day like it was made of pearls. Her hands moved with the efficiency of someone who'd scanned thousands upon thousands of items, muscle memory taking over the physical work while her mind wandered to the bills waiting at home on the kitchen counter, the car that needed new tires before winter got worse, her son Jake's college application fees coming due, the constant mental mathematics of paycheck-to-paycheck life. Rita was good at her job in the way that people are good at things they've done so many times they could do them in their sleep. Patient with difficult customers who couldn't find their loyalty cards or insisted an item was on sale when it wasn't. Quick with a smile even on hard days when her feet ached and her back hurt and she wanted nothing more than to go home. Kind to the elderly shoppers who moved slowly and paid in exact change counted out penny by penny. The kind of employee who showed up on time, never caused problems, never called in sick unless she absolutely had to, never complained even when she had every reason to. Management loved her because she was dependable. Customers loved her because she was genuinely nice. Co-workers loved her because she picked up shifts when they needed coverage and never participated in workplace drama. The wealthy man placed his items on the belt with care, each item positioned deliberately rather than just dumped out of the cart like most customers did. Rita scanned them one by one, her movements automatic, barely looking at what she was ringing up because her hands knew the motion so well. But she noticed his hands as they released each item. Manicured nails, no wedding ring which seemed slightly odd for a man his age who clearly had money, a thin white scar across one knuckle that seemed out of place with everything else about him, a mark of some past injury that didn't fit the polished image. He didn't make small talk, just stood there with the same composed expression, polite but distant, the way wealthy people often are with service workers, not rude exactly but existing in a different sphere where cashiers and waitresses and delivery drivers are functionally invisible beyond their utility. The total came to $68.43. Rita announced it clearly, her standard professional tone that she'd perfected over 12 years, and that's when something shifted. The air in the store seemed to change, though if you'd asked anyone to explain what changed they couldn't have articulated it, just a feeling that something was about to happen. The man reached into his coat pocket, the motion smooth and practiced, the gesture of someone who'd done this 10,000 times before without thinking about it. But his hand stopped. He felt around inside the pocket, his expression changing almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something crossing his face that didn't match the calm exterior he'd maintained until that moment. Concern, maybe confusion, possibly the beginning of panic being carefully suppressed. He checked his other coat pocket. Then his pants pockets, both of them, patting them down with increasing urgency. The movements became slightly less controlled, though he was clearly working very hard to maintain his composure, to not make a scene, to handle this privately and quietly. Rita watched, her hand hovering over the register, waiting for whatever came next, her cashier instincts already sensing this wasn't going to be a standard transaction. The people in line behind him noticed too. The shift in energy was palpable now. Phones were lowered slightly. Conversations paused. Eyes focused forward on the well-dressed man who appeared to be having some kind of problem. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click Click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. I apologize, the man said, his voice cultured and smooth, the kind of accent that suggested expensive private schools and international travel, Oxford or Cambridge maybe, or American prep schools that cost $50,000 a year. It seems I've left my wallet elsewhere. He said it calmly, matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather or mentioning he'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. But Rita caught something in his eyes, just for a second, a flash of genuine distress that didn't match the casual tone he was working so hard to project. The people behind him in line reacted immediately, like they'd been waiting for exactly this moment, like this confirmed something they'd suspected from the beginning. A woman in expensive workout clothes, the kind with designer logos that cost more than regular clothes, let out an audible sigh, loud enough for everyone within 10 feet to hear clearly. The guy behind her, college age with headphones around his neck and a backpack covered in band patches, muttered to himself but definitely loud enough to be heard, seriously? Come on, man. A teenager texted furiously, probably updating friends about the drama unfolding in the grocery store line. Then the whispers started, rippling down the line like a current, like electricity moving through water, person to person, spreading faster than the man could have imagined. Look at those shoes, someone said, their voice dripping with skepticism and accusation. That coat probably cost $5,000, another voice added, doing the mental math about what cashmere coats from expensive brands retail for. A man in a construction vest, standing 3 people back in line with paint stains on his jeans and dirt under his fingernails, raised his voice slightly so everyone could hear his verdict, yeah, right. He forgot his wallet. What kind of scam is this? This is one of those social experiments for YouTube. The assumption spread instantly through the line like a virus, a shared understanding forming among strangers united by skepticism and the certainty that comes from judging what you see on the surface. This had to be some kind of con, had to be. Who dresses like that and forgets their wallet? The wealthy don't have problems like regular people. They don't forget things. They have assistants and reminders and backup credit cards. They don't stand at grocery store registers unable to pay for bread and milk. The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that Rita caught because she was watching his face while everyone else was judging his clothes. I can return tomorrow, he said to Rita, his voice quieter now, some of the confidence draining out like air from a tire with a slow leak. I apologize for the inconvenience. He started to step back, beginning the awkward dance of removing himself from the line, reaching for his groceries to put them back, and that's when Rita saw it. Really saw it. His hands weren't just moving to gather his items. They were trembling. Slightly, barely noticeable if you weren't paying close attention, but trembling nonetheless, the kind of shake that comes from adrenaline or fear or something neurological, something beyond simple embarrassment. And there was something else, something in the way he held himself, a stiffness that suggested he was concentrating very hard on maintaining his dignity while something inside was crumbling, like he was using every ounce of his considerable self-control to not fall apart in public, to not show weakness in front of these strangers who were already convinced he was trying to manipulate them. Rita had worked retail long enough to develop an instinct about people, a sixth sense that comes from interacting with thousands of customers and seeing the full spectrum of human behavior. She'd seen every scam, every con, every manipulation. The people who forgot their wallets and had elaborate stories ready about their car breaking down or their phone being stolen. The ones who made scenes hoping someone would pay just to make them go away, weaponizing discomfort. The professionals who could cry on command and make you feel like a monster for not helping, who had the whole performance down to a science. This man wasn't giving her any of those signals. What she saw instead was shame, real and raw and painful, the kind that comes from a place much deeper than embarrassment about money. She saw fear in his eyes, genuine terror about something she couldn't identify. She saw a man working incredibly hard to maintain composure while everything inside him was screaming. And she made a decision in that split second, the kind of decision that changes everything even though you don't know it at the time. Without overthinking it, without checking to see if anyone was watching, without calculating the cost or considering the consequences or worrying about what her coworkers would say. Rita reached under her register where she kept her purse. A worn canvas bag, faded from years of use, bought at a discount store when her previous purse fell apart and she needed something cheap and functional. She pulled out her wallet, removed her debit card, the one connected to her checking account that currently held about $400 until her next paycheck in 3 days, and swiped it before the man could say another word, before he could protest or stop her or insist he'd come back tomorrow. The transaction processed with its familiar beep. $68.43. Almost a full day's pay for Rita after taxes and deductions. The receipt printed with its mechanical whir, that sound she'd heard thousands of times, but this time it felt different, heavier with meaning. The store went completely silent. It wasn't gradual, it was instant, like someone had hit a mute button on the world, like every sound had been vacuumed out of the space. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Phones were lowered. Shopping carts stopped moving. People turned to stare, not hiding their shock, their confusion, their judgment, their complete inability to process what they just witnessed. The woman in workout clothes had her mouth slightly open, frozen in an expression of disbelief. The college kid pulled his headphones down completely, not sure he'd seen what he'd just seen, thinking maybe he'd missed something. The construction worker who'd called it a scam looked genuinely stunned, frozen with his own groceries half loaded onto the belt behind the divider. The wealthy man stared at Rita, his carefully maintained composure cracking like ice under pressure, fissures appearing in the calm facade he'd been projecting. "You didn't need to do that," he said quietly, his voice suddenly different, rougher, carrying emotion he'd been working so hard to suppress, vulnerability bleeding through despite his best efforts. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about me." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, just barely, but Rita heard it, heard the pain underneath the words. Rita handed him the receipt, meeting his eyes directly, and said with quiet certainty, "I know enough." Her voice was steady, kind, without a trace of superiority or expectation of gratitude or judgment. Just human recognizing human. Just one person seeing another person in distress and choosing to help. The man took the receipt, his hands shaking more visibly now that he dropped some of the protective facade. He gathered his bags slowly, carefully, like he was trying to commit every detail of the moment to memory, like he needed to remember that this happened, that someone saw him and helped him when everyone else had judged him. Then he looked at Rita one more time, a look that carried everything he couldn't say in front of all these watching strangers, all the gratitude and relief and emotion he couldn't express, and walked toward the exit. His steps were measured, dignified, even though something in his bearing suggested he wanted to run, wanted to escape this moment that had exposed his vulnerability to a room full of people who'd shown no mercy. The automatic doors opened with their familiar whoosh and closed behind him. For several seconds, nobody moved. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, heavy with unspoken judgments and half-formed thoughts and confusion about what had just happened and what it meant. Then it broke, shattered by voices eager to explain what they'd witnessed, to make sense of something that didn't fit their understanding of how the world works. "You just got scammed," the construction worker said, shaking his head with the certainty of someone who knows better, who's seen it all before. "That guy's probably driving a Mercedes in the parking lot right now, laughing about the sucker who paid for his groceries. Probably does this every week at different stores." The woman in workout clothes agreed, her voice carrying that particular tone people use when they're trying to be helpful but are really saying "I told you so," really saying "I would never be that stupid." "Rita, honey, that man was wearing a $2,000 coat. I know fashion. That was Burberry or something equivalent. He has money. You just gave him almost $70 of your own money for what? He didn't need it. This was definitely some kind of social experiment or TikTok video." Other voices joined in, a chorus of judgment and certainty. "People like that take advantage of kindness. He saw you were nice and he played you. You should have just let him leave. That's why you can't trust people these days." The consensus was immediate and unanimous. Rita had been fooled, taken advantage of, scammed by a wealthy man who got his kicks manipulating service workers into paying for things he could easily afford himself. Rita didn't respond to any of it. She just started scanning the next customer's items, her face neutral, her movements practiced and efficient, maintaining her professional demeanor even though something inside her had shifted. But inside, doubt began creeping in, small at first like water finding cracks in concrete, then growing, spreading, filling spaces she didn't know were empty. What if they were right? What if she had just been played by someone who did this regularly, who had a whole system worked out, who targeted grocery stores in middle-class neighborhoods where cashiers might be sympathetic? She thought about her bank account, the careful budget she maintained in a spiral notebook at home, every dollar accounted for and allocated. The exact calculations she did every single month to make sure everything was covered, the rent paid on time, the utilities current, the car payment made, groceries bought, nothing left over for emergencies or extras or unexpected expenses. $68 wasn't nothing. It was groceries for her own family for almost 3 days. It was the copay for her daughter Hannah's dental appointment next week. It was the gas money she needed to get through the week without running on empty. It was real money that she'd just given to a stranger who looked like he could buy and sell her 10 times over without noticing the expense. That night, Rita went home to her small 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood where all the houses looked basically the same, built in the 70s, showing their age but still standing, still functional. Her husband Marcus was in the living room, still in his work uniform from the auto shop where he'd been a mechanic for 20 years, watching TV with their daughter Hannah, who was 14 and brilliant and wanted to be a veterinarian, but they both knew the money wasn't there for veterinary school, wasn't there for any school really unless Jake and Hannah got serious scholarships. Rita made dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce because it was cheap and filling and stretched across multiple meals. She helped Hannah with her algebra homework, problems about trains leaving stations that had no connection to real life but apparently mattered for standardized tests. She did the dishes while Marcus took out the trash and Jake disappeared into his room to do whatever 17-year-old boys do on their computers. She went through all the normal motions of a Tuesday evening, the routine that had become so familiar it was almost automatic. She didn't mention what happened at the store. It felt too raw, too uncertain, too vulnerable to share when she didn't know if she'd done something noble or something stupid. Before bed, she checked her bank account on her phone, a nightly ritual born from years of living paycheck to paycheck, years of needing to know exactly where things stood financially at all times. The charge had gone through. $68.43, gone from her available balance. She closed the app and tried to sleep, but doubt sat heavy in her chest like a stone, like something she'd swallowed that wouldn't digest. Had she helped someone in need? Or had she just given away money her family needed to a wealthy man running some kind of elaborate psychological experiment? The next day at work, her coworkers brought it up immediately during her break, the story having spread through the small world of Morrison's Market employees. "Did that rich guy ever come back?" someone asked, biting into a sandwich from home. Rita shook her head, taking a sip of coffee from her thermos. "Knew it was a scam," another cashier said, not unkindly, not trying to hurt Rita, just stating what seemed obvious to everyone who heard the story. "People like that, they take advantage. You're too nice, Rita. You gotta protect yourself. You can't save everyone." Rita nodded and changed the subject, redirecting the conversation to someone's upcoming birthday or the new manager they were getting or anything other than her growing suspicion that she'd made a very expensive mistake that her family would pay for when they needed that $68 for something important. By the third day, she'd pushed it to the back of her mind, filed it away with all the other small regrets and questionable decisions that accumulate over a lifetime of trying to do the right thing and not always being certain what the right thing is. She told herself it didn't matter, that what's done was done, that maybe she'd helped someone and maybe she'd been scammed, but either way there was nothing to be done about it now. She went to work, scanned groceries, smiled at customers, came home, made dinner, helped with homework, checked her bank account, went to bed. The routine continued. Life moved forward. The incident began to fade, becoming just another story, another moment that seemed significant at the time but would eventually be forgotten completely. For days after the incident, Rita was working the morning shift, 10 to 6, when a black Mercedes-Benz pulled into the Morrison's Market parking lot. Not flashy, not one of those huge SUVs with the aggressive styling and chrome everywhere. Just a sedan, elegant and understated, the kind of car that whispers wealth rather than shouting it. The same man from Tuesday evening emerged from the driver's side. He was dressed more casually today, dark slacks and a sweater, no coat since the weather had warmed slightly, but he still carried himself with that same careful composure, that same bearing that suggested decades of success and control. Behind him, a younger woman got out from the passenger side, professional-looking, maybe early 30s, carrying a leather portfolio and moving with the efficiency of someone who bills by the hour. They walked into Morrison's together, and Rita's heart started pounding before her brain fully processed why. Something was about to happen. She didn't know what, couldn't have guessed, but her body knew before her mind did, adrenaline dumping into her system, her hands starting to shake slightly as she scanned an elderly customer's cat food and denture cream. The man and the professional woman approached her register even though she had a customer, even though lane 3 was open with no line. He waited patiently while Rita finished with the elderly woman, who paid in exact change, counting out pennies from a small coin purse, taking her time because rushing wasn't something she did anymore. When the elderly woman finally shuffled away with her small bag, the man stepped forward. "Rita," he said, reading her name tag even though he clearly already knew her name, had probably been thinking about her name for 4 days straight. "I was hoping you'd be working today. May I speak with you for a moment?" His voice was gentle but there was an urgency beneath it, a need to explain something that had been weighing on him, something he needed her to understand. Mr. Patterson, the store manager, appeared from the back office like he'd been summoned, alerted by one of the other cashiers that something unusual was happening at Register 7. He was a large man, mid-50s, with a protective streak toward his staff that came from 20 years of dealing with difficult customers and corporate demands. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone professional but carrying an edge of warning, ready to defend Rita if this turned confrontational. The wealthy man shook his head quickly, holding up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "No problem at all. Quite the opposite. My name is Jonathan Reed. This is my attorney, Michelle Park. I was in your store 4 days ago, and Rita paid for my groceries when I couldn't. I've been trying to find the right time to return when she was working." He reached into his pocket, and Rita noticed his hands were steadier now, more controlled than they'd been Tuesday evening, and pulled out a white envelope, plain white paper, nothing fancy. "I wanted to return what she gave me, with my deepest gratitude." Rita's hands trembled as she took the envelope, her fingers fumbling with the flap. Inside was $68.43 in cash, exact change, counted out precisely. But there was also something else. A cashier's check, the official kind from a bank with watermarks and security features. Rita's eyes widened as she read the amount. $10,000. Made out to Rita Chen. "I can't accept this," she said immediately, automatically, trying to hand it back, her voice rising with panic and confusion. "I didn't do it for money. I just thought you needed help. This is too much. I can't take this." Jonathan Reed smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that comes from a place of deep exhaustion and profound relief and gratitude so intense it's almost painful. "I know you didn't do it for money. That's precisely why I want you to have it. May I tell you something? May I tell everyone here what really happened that night?" Rita nodded, still holding the check like it might vanish if she blinked, her mind racing to make sense of what was happening, why this man was here, what any of this meant. Jonathan took a breath, composing himself, and addressed not just Rita but the small crowd that had gathered, drawn by the unusual scene unfolding at Register 7. Mr. Patterson stood nearby, protective but curious. Other cashiers had abandoned their registers to watch. Customers who'd been shopping had stopped, forming a semicircle, phones coming out now to record whatever was about to be said. "4 days ago, I had just left my neurologist's office. I have early-stage Alzheimer's disease. I'm 59 years old, and I'm losing my memory." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, reframing everything everyone thought they knew about what happened Tuesday evening. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. Jonathan continued, his voice steady but carrying the weight of everything he was saying, every word mattering. "That day, I'd had a particularly difficult episode. I forgot where I'd parked my car. I wandered the parking lot for 20 minutes before I found it, walking up and down rows, clicking my key fob, feeling more panicked with every minute that passed. I forgot what day it was, thought it was Wednesday when it was Tuesday, got confused about an appointment I'd already attended. And yes, I genuinely forgot that I'd left my wallet on my kitchen counter that morning. I'd taken it out to pay a bill, set it down, and my brain simply didn't encode the memory of where I'd put it. The store was completely silent now, the kind of silence that feels physical, pressing down on everyone, making it hard to breathe. People who'd been so certain this was a scam 4 days ago were now confronting the reality that they'd been completely wrong, that their judgments had been based on nothing but appearance and assumption. Jonathan continued, needing them to understand, needing Rita especially to understand. I built a successful law practice over 30 years. I argued cases before the Supreme Court. I've represented major corporations and individuals in matters worth millions of dollars. I have money, investments, property, all the external markers of success. But in that moment, standing at Rita's register, I wasn't a successful attorney. I was a confused, frightened man who couldn't remember something as simple as bringing his wallet to buy groceries. And everyone in that line looked at me like I was running a con. Everyone judged me based on my clothes and assumed I was playing games. Everyone except Rita. He turned to face Rita directly, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch, made tears start forming even though she was trying to hold them back. You saw a person who needed help, and you helped. No questions. No judgment. No demands for explanation. You just helped. You have no idea what that meant to me. I went home that night and I cried for the first time since my diagnosis 6 months ago. Not because of the disease. Not because of what I'm losing. But because a stranger reminded me that I'm still human. That I still have dignity. That my life still has value even as I'm losing pieces of myself every single day, even as my brain betrays me in ways I can't control or predict. Rita felt tears running down her face now, not bothering to wipe them away, just letting them fall while this stranger she'd helped told his truth to a room full of people who'd been so quick to judge, so certain they knew what was happening. I'm so sorry about your diagnosis, she whispered, her voice breaking, cracking under the weight of empathy and understanding. Jonathan shook his head firmly, insistently. Don't be sorry. Be proud of who you are. The $10,000 isn't charity. It's acknowledgement. It's gratitude. It's me trying to show you that what you did mattered more than you'll ever fully understand. He gestured to the woman beside him. My attorney Michelle has helped me set up a foundation to support caregivers and families dealing with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. I want you to have this money for your family, for whatever you need, college funds for your kids, car repairs, savings, anything. But I also want to invite you to serve on the Foundation's board of directors if you're interested. We need people who understand what real compassion looks like. People who act when others stand by and judge. People who see human beings instead of assumptions. Mr. Patterson stepped forward, his expression having shifted from protective to genuinely moved, his voice thick with emotion. Rita has been one of our most valued employees for over a decade. This store is extremely lucky to have her, and I tell her that, but I don't think she believes me. Jonathan nodded, looking around at the gathered crowd. I can see why you value her. Character like hers is extraordinarily rare, especially in a world that rewards cynicism and self-protection. He looked around at the people who had gathered, some of them the same faces who'd judged him days before, who'd called it a scam, who'd whispered about his expensive clothes and made assumptions about his motivations. The construction worker was there, doing his Saturday morning shopping, his face red now with shame. The woman in workout clothes stood near the organic produce, her hand over her mouth. "I don't tell you my story to make anyone feel guilty," Jonathan said, his voice gentle but firm. "I tell you because we all make assumptions every single day based on what we see on the surface. I looked wealthy, so people assumed I was playing games, assumed I couldn't possibly have a real problem. But you never know what someone is carrying. You never know what battle they're fighting behind whatever facade they're presenting to the world." The construction worker stepped forward hesitantly, his voice rough with emotion. "Mr. Reed, I'm sorry. I was one of the people who thought you were trying to trick someone. I said some really unkind things in line that day. I called it a scam. I was wrong." Jonathan smiled at him warmly, without any trace of anger or resentment. "You don't owe me an apology. You reacted based on what you saw, based on what your experience has taught you to expect. We live in a world where scams are real and people do take advantage. Your skepticism wasn't unreasonable. But maybe next time, you'll pause before assuming the worst. That's all any of us can do. Try to be a little more like Rita was that night. Give people the benefit of the doubt even when it costs us something." Over the following days and weeks, the story spread through Cleveland like wildfire, then beyond. Local news picked it up first, sending reporters to interview Rita and Jonathan. Then regional news, then national. The story hit social media and went viral, shared millions of times, commented on by people around the world who saw in it something they needed to believe, some evidence that kindness still existed in a world that often felt cruel and transactional. Rita was interviewed multiple times, always uncomfortable with the attention, her natural modesty making her deflect praise and insist she just did what anyone would have done, even though the evidence from that Tuesday evening suggested most people wouldn't have, most people didn't. "I just did what felt right," she kept saying to reporters, to neighbors, to everyone who called her a hero. "I saw someone who needed help and I helped. That's all it was." But the story resonated because it wasn't all it was, because it revealed something about human nature that people desperately wanted to believe in, the idea that compassion still matters, that seeing each other as humans still makes a difference, that we're not all just isolated individuals protecting our own interests in a hostile world. Rita used the $10,000 exactly how Jonathan suggested. She opened college savings accounts for Hannah and Jake, putting $5,000 in each account, knowing it wouldn't cover everything, but it was a start, more than they'd had before, more than she'd ever imagined being able to save. When she told her children about the money, about what had happened, they both cried. Hannah hugged her mom so tight Rita could barely breathe, saying over and over, "Mom, you're incredible. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe any of this is real." Jake, who was 17 and generally too cool to show emotion, had tears streaming down his face, saying, "You paid for a stranger's groceries and he's sending me to college. How does that even make sense?" Marcus just looked at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time even after 22 years of marriage, seeing the depth of who she was, the courage it took to help someone when everyone around her was choosing judgment. "I always knew you were special," he said quietly that night when they were alone. "But this, Rita. This is beyond anything I imagined." Rita shook her head, uncomfortable with being elevated, with being seen as anything other than ordinary. "I'm not special. I just did what I'd want someone to do for me if I was in that situation. That's all." Rita did join the foundation board, attending her first meeting 2 weeks after the incident, walking into a conference room full of doctors and lawyers and wealthy donors who'd given substantial sums to support Alzheimer's research and caregiver programs. She felt completely out of place, a grocery store cashier among PhDs and JDs and MBAs, but Jonathan had insisted she belonged there, that her perspective was exactly what the foundation needed. And he was right. Rita brought insights that the others didn't have, understanding what it meant to care for someone with limited resources, understanding the exhaustion that comes from working all day and then coming home to caregiving responsibilities, understanding the small moments of grace that made the impossible possible, the kindness of strangers that could mean the difference between making it and falling apart. She talked about her own father, who died with dementia years earlier, how the family had struggled to afford care, how they'd taken turns staying with him because professional caregivers were too expensive, how they'd watched him disappear piece by piece until he didn't recognize any of them anymore. She talked about the guilt that came with not being able to do more, not being able to afford the best care, not being able to stop what was happening. And the foundation listened, really listened, and began developing programs specifically designed for families like hers, families where money was tight and options were limited but love was infinite. The foundation thrived under the leadership of people like Rita, helping thousands of families navigate the heartbreaking reality of watching someone they love disappear into the fog of dementia. They provided respite care so exhausted family members could rest. They offered support groups where caregivers could share their experiences without judgment. They funded research into treatments and eventually, hopefully, a cure. And at the center of it all was Rita's simple act of paying for a stranger's groceries, the seed from which everything else grew. Jonathan Reed became a regular at Morrison's Market, shopping there every single week even though it was significantly out of his way, even though there were upscale grocery stores much closer to his home in the wealthy suburb where he lived. He always went through Rita's line when she was working, and they'd chat briefly about the foundation, about her kids, about his treatment, about life. They became friends in that quiet way that people do when they've shared a profound moment that changed both their lives, when they've seen each other at their most vulnerable and chosen kindness over judgment. Jonathan's condition progressed over time, as everyone who understood Alzheimer's knew it would, as everyone who'd watched someone die from it had seen before. Within a year and a half, he needed more help with daily tasks, forgetting appointments, getting confused about time and place, struggling with words that used to come easily. Within 2 years, he'd transferred all his active cases to other attorneys at his firm, no longer able to maintain the precision and focus that legal work demanded. But he never forgot Rita, not even as other memories faded, not even as he forgot the names of colleagues he'd worked with for decades, forgot his own phone number, forgot what day it was or what year. He remembered the cashier who saw him as human when he felt invisible. His attorney Michelle told Rita during a foundation meeting that whenever Jonathan had a moment of clarity, brief windows when the fog lifted temporarily, he'd ask about her, ask if they'd thanked her properly, ask if the foundation was helping people, ask if they were making the difference he'd hoped they would make. "You gave him something precious in his final years," Michelle said, her own eyes filling with tears. "You gave him hope. You reminded him that his life mattered, that he mattered as a person beyond his accomplishments and his wealth. That's a gift you can't put a price on." 2.5 years after that Tuesday evening, Jonathan Reed passed away peacefully at home, in his own bed, surrounded by his adult children who'd come from across the country to be with him in his final days. His daughter Emma and his son Thomas held a small private service for family and close friends, but they invited Rita specifically, sending her a handwritten invitation that she kept in a drawer with her most treasured possessions. She sat near the back of the chapel, feeling out of place again among the judges and attorneys and business leaders who'd come to pay their respects to a man who'd been enormously successful and influential in legal circles, but knowing she belonged there because Jonathan had wanted her there. During the eulogy, Emma mentioned the grocery store incident specifically, her voice breaking as she talked about her father's final years. "In the last chapter of my father's life, when Alzheimer's was taking so much from him, when he was losing his memories and his abilities and his sense of self, he held on to one truth above all others, that a woman named Rita Chen reminded him that kindness still exists in the world. That even when we're at our most vulnerable, stripped of everything that usually protects us, there are people who will choose compassion over convenience. My father built his career on justice and precedent and law, on rational argument and evidence and logic. But Rita taught him something that can't be found in law books or case files. She taught him about grace, about the unexpected kindness of strangers, about human decency in moments when everything else falls away." Emma continued, crying now but pushing through because these words mattered, because her father had asked her to say them if Rita came to his service. "My father told me that in the final months before he lost the ability to have these conversations, he said that paying for those groceries, that simple act cost Rita almost a full day's wages. She had no idea who he was, no reason to believe he'd ever repay her, every reason based on his appearance to assume he didn't need help. But she helped anyway. And that act of kindness, that choice to see him as human instead of as a wealthy man running a scam, gave him something to hold on to when everything else was slipping away. It gave him hope. It gave him dignity. It reminded him that even in his diminishment, even as he lost everything that had defined him, he was still worth caring about. After the service, Emma approached Rita, her face puffy from crying, and hugged her tightly, desperately, like Rita was family, like they'd known each other for years instead of having just met. "Thank you," Emma said simply, the words inadequate for what she meant but the only words available. "For seeing my father. For helping him when he needed it most. For reminding all of us what really matters." Rita hugged her back, this stranger who felt like family, and they cried together for a man who taught them both something about the unexpected ways our lives intersect and change each other, about how a single moment of kindness can ripple out in ways we never imagine, touching lives we'll never know about, creating effects that outlive us. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself, really honest, not what you wish you'd do but what you'd actually do in the moment. If you were in that grocery store line, watching a man who appeared wealthy claim he forgot his wallet while everyone around you whispered about scams and social experiments, what would you have done? Would you have assumed the worst, like most people did? Would you have whispered to the person next to you about how this was obviously fake, probably for TikTok? Would you have rolled your eyes and sighed, annoyed at another delay in your busy day when you just wanted to get home? Would you have pulled out your phone to record it, thinking it might go viral? Or would you have looked deeper, past the expensive clothes and the polished exterior, to see the human being underneath who might genuinely be struggling with something you couldn't see? Here's the uncomfortable truth that this story forces every single one of us to confront, the truth we'd rather not think about because it reveals something ugly about human nature. We judge constantly and we judge fast. We make split-second assessments based on appearance, on our own biases and experiences, on what seems logical or likely based on patterns we've observed. The construction worker who called it a scam wasn't a bad person, wasn't unusually cruel or cynical. The woman in workout clothes who made assumptions about Jonathan's wealth wasn't a villain. They were just human, doing what humans do instinctively, what we're wired to do for survival. We categorize, we assess, we protect ourselves by creating narratives that make sense of what we see, by trying to predict behavior based on available information. But those narratives are often completely wrong. Jonathan Reed looked like he had everything figured out, like he was living the dream life that most people aspire to. And in material terms, he absolutely did. He had wealth and success and all the external markers that suggest a life well lived, a life of comfort and security and freedom from the worries that plague most people. But he was losing the one thing money can't buy or protect or restore, his mind, his memories, his sense of self, his ability to navigate the world independently. In that moment at the register, he wasn't a wealthy attorney with resources and connections and the ability to solve problems with a phone call. He was a terrified man confronting his own fragility, experiencing the horror of his brain betraying him in public, in front of strangers who looked at his expensive clothes and immediately assumed he was manipulating them. Only one person saw past the surface. Only Rita looked at Jonathan Reed and saw someone who needed help, period, end of story, regardless of what his shoes cost or what his coat suggested about his bank account or what assumptions everyone else was making. She made a choice that night that cost her real money, money she genuinely needed, money that represented hours of her labor standing at that register scanning groceries for people who rarely saw her as fully human, money that her family needed for bills and expenses and the constant financial pressure of living paycheck to paycheck. And she made that choice with absolutely no expectation of reward, no knowledge that it would lead anywhere beyond that single transaction, no guarantee that she hadn't just been scammed exactly like everyone said she was. What does that say about the rest of us? How many times have we walked past someone in need because they didn't fit our mental image of what need looks like? How many times have we assumed someone was fine because they were well-dressed or articulate or seemingly put together? How many times have we ignored someone struggling because helping would be inconvenient or uncomfortable or risky? Suffering doesn't always announce itself with obvious signs, with torn clothes and desperate pleas and visible markers of poverty. Sometimes it wears expensive shoes and a tailored coat. Sometimes it shops in the same stores we do, stands in the same lines, goes through the same motions of normal life while falling apart inside, invisible to everyone who assumes that appearance equals reality, that external success means internal peace. Rita didn't have extra money to spare. She wasn't comfortable or secure or in a position where $68 was negligible. She was working a cashier job, raising 2 kids with her husband who worked at an auto shop, living paycheck to paycheck like 40% of Americans, doing the constant math about what could wait and what couldn't, making trade-offs and sacrifices and difficult choices about how to stretch limited resources to cover unlimited needs. $68.43 was real money to her, money that represented real trade-offs, real consequences if something unexpected came up before her next paycheck. She could have looked away. She could have let Jonathan put his groceries back and leave, could have moved on to the next customer and forgotten the whole thing 5 minutes later. Nobody would have blamed her. In fact, most people would have said she made the smart choice, the rational choice, protecting her own interests, not falling for an obvious scam, not being naive or gullible or foolish. But she chose differently. She chose to help someone who appeared not to need it. She chose compassion when everyone around her was choosing judgment. She chose to see a human being in distress rather than a wealthy man running a con. And in doing so, she changed not just Jonathan's life, but her own, and her children's, and the lives of thousands of families who benefited from the foundation her single act of kindness inspired. That's the thing about compassion that we so often miss, the piece that doesn't fit neatly into cost-benefit analysis or rational decision-making frameworks. You never know where it leads. You never know what chain of events you're setting in motion with one small act of unexpected kindness. You never know whose life you're changing or how far the ripples will spread. Rita thought she was just buying groceries for a stranger having a bad day, helping someone get through a difficult moment, maybe saving someone a little embarrassment. She had no idea she was giving a dying man a reason to keep fighting, a reminder that his life still had value even as Alzheimer's stripped away everything that had defined him. She had no idea she was setting in motion the creation of a foundation that would help thousands of people navigate the nightmare of dementia. She had no idea she was teaching her children a lesson about human decency that would shape their entire approach to life, that would determine what kind of adults they became. She couldn't have known any of that. But she acted anyway, without expectation of reward, without knowledge of outcomes, because it was simply the right thing to do. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want you to think about this deeply, not just give the easy answer but really examine your heart and your habits. What would it take for you to be more like Rita? What would have to change in your heart, in your perspective, in your default way of seeing the world, for you to choose compassion over convenience? To help even when it costs you something real? To look past appearances and assumptions to see the human being in front of you who might be drowning while appearing to float? What fears would you have to overcome? What cynicism would you have to set aside? What risk would you have to be willing to take? And here's the harder question, the one that makes us all squirm uncomfortably, the one we'd rather not answer honestly. How many Jonathan Reeds have you walked past in your life? How many people have you judged based on surface-level observations, assumptions about their wealth or status or capability? How many opportunities to make a real, lasting difference have you missed because someone didn't look like they needed help, or because helping would have been inconvenient, or because you assumed someone else would step up, or because protecting yourself and your resources seemed smarter and safer than taking a risk on a stranger who might be manipulating you? I'm not asking these questions to make you feel guilty. Guilt without action is just self-indulgence, just emotional wallowing that changes nothing. I'm asking because these are the questions I ask myself every single day, questions we all need to wrestle with if we're going to build a world that's more compassionate than the one we inherited, if we're going to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. We all fail at this. All of us. We all have moments where we choose comfort over compassion, where we look away instead of stepping forward, where we protect our own interests at the expense of someone else's dignity. That's human nature. That's the default setting we all share, the evolutionary programming that kept our ancestors alive but doesn't always serve us well in modern society. But the question isn't whether we fail. The question is what we do with that awareness of our failures. Do we shrug it off and keep moving, telling ourselves that's just how the world works, that looking out for number one is smart and sensible and the only way to survive? Or do we let that awareness change us, even slightly, even incrementally, so that next time we're standing in a grocery store line watching someone struggle, we might choose differently? So that next time we see someone who appears to have everything together, we might pause before assuming their life is easy. So that next time we have an opportunity to help, even when it costs us something, we might actually do it instead of finding a comfortable reason not to. Rita isn't a saint or a hero or some moral superhero immune to doubt and fear and self-interest. She's not perfect. She makes mistakes. She has bad days. She gets frustrated and tired and overwhelmed just like everyone else. She's just a woman who worked a cashier job and made a choice one Tuesday evening that she couldn't have known would matter so much, that would change so many lives, that would create ripples that spread far beyond that single moment. That's the beauty and the terror of it. We never know which moments will define us. We never know which small decisions will ripple out and touch lives we'll never see. We never know when we're being tested, when the universe is watching to see what we'll do when nobody's forcing us to be decent, when there's no reward except the internal knowledge that we did the right thing. All we can do is try. Try to be decent. Try to see people. Try to help when we can, even when it's hard, even when it costs us something, even when everyone around us is choosing differently. That's all Rita did. She tried. She saw someone in distress and she helped. No grand philosophy. No complex moral calculus. No expectation of reward or recognition. Just simple human decency in a moment when it mattered more than she could have possibly known, when one person's choice to see another person as human changed everything. Jonathan Reed spent his final years trying to make sure Rita's kindness multiplied, trying to turn one act of compassion into a movement that would outlive him, that would help people long after he was gone. The foundation she helped build is still running today, still helping families navigate the nightmare of Alzheimer's and dementia, still proving that one act of kindness can grow into something so much larger than itself, something that touches lives the original giver will never know about. Hannah, Rita's daughter, is in college now studying social work, inspired by what her mother did and what she learned sitting on that foundation board for 3 years, watching how compassion works in practice, seeing how caring for people translates into systems and programs and real help. She wants to spend her life helping people the way her mother helped a stranger in a grocery store, wants to make that same choice to see people as human, wants to build a career around the principle that everyone deserves dignity regardless of their circumstances. That's legacy. Not money accumulating in a bank account. Not fame or recognition or plaques on walls. Not professional success measured in titles and salaries. Legacy is the impact we have on other people, the way we change them, the way they carry forward what we gave them, the way our choices ripple out through time touching lives we'll never know about. Rita gave Jonathan dignity when he felt like he was losing everything that made him who he was. Jonathan gave Rita resources and opportunity and a platform to help others on a scale she never imagined possible. Hannah is giving her future to service, to caring for people who desperately need someone to see them as human. And all of it started with $68.43 and a woman who chose to see past the surface to the human being underneath, who chose compassion when everyone else chose judgment. That's the power we all carry, whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we use it or waste it. The power to change someone's trajectory with a single act of unexpected kindness. The power to be the reason someone keeps fighting when they want to give up. The power to prove that we're not as alone in this world as we sometimes feel. The power to build something better than what we found, something that outlives us, something that makes the world slightly less cruel than it was before we arrived. The question is whether we'll use that power or squander it, whether we'll step forward or step back, whether we'll be remembered as someone who helped or someone who walked past people in need because helping was inconvenient. So tell me in the comments right now, and I genuinely want to know because your stories matter. Have you ever helped someone who appeared not to need it? Have you ever been judged based on your appearance or circumstances? Have you ever been the person struggling while looking like you had everything together? How did it feel? What did you learn? What changed in you because of it? And if you were in Rita's position tomorrow, standing at a register watching a well-dressed stranger claim they forgot their wallet while everyone around you whispers about scams and social experiments and viral videos, what would you honestly do? Would you step forward like Rita did? Or would you protect yourself like most people do, like you've probably done before, like all of us have done at some point? Your answer matters more than you think. Your stories matter. Your experiences shape how we all think about these moments, these tests we face when we think nobody's watching but the universe is paying very close attention to who we become when there's no audience, no reward, no recognition. Maybe by sharing our stories, our failures and our victories, our moments of courage and our moments of weakness, we can encourage each other to be a little braver, a little kinder, a little more willing to step forward when everyone else is stepping back. Maybe we can build a community of people who choose compassion over convenience, who see humanity over appearance, who help because it's right and not because there's a reward attached. If this story moved you, if it made you think or feel something real, if it challenged you or inspired you or made you want to be better than you were 15 minutes ago before you started watching, then subscribe to this channel right now and click that notification bell so you never miss our content. Because every single week, we share true stories about ordinary people making extraordinary choices, about the moments that reveal who we really are when the cameras aren't rolling and nobody's keeping score, about the quiet courage it takes to be decent in a world that often rewards the opposite, that often punishes kindness and mocks compassion. These stories matter because they remind us that we're all capable of being more than we think we are, that compassion isn't reserved for special people or special occasions, that it's a choice we can make every single day in small ways and large when we're brave enough to try. They matter because they prove that one person really can make a difference, that small acts really do ripple out in ways we can't predict, that the world really does change one choice at a time, one moment at a time, one person at a time deciding to be decent when it would be easier not to be. Rita is still a cashier at Morrison's Market. She could have quit after the foundation work expanded, after the media attention died down, after the $10,000 gave her family some breathing room financially. But she didn't. She says she likes the routine, likes seeing her regular customers, likes being part of the community in a tangible daily way, likes the simplicity of the work that lets her mind process other things while her hands do what they've done thousands of times. She keeps the obituary clipping about Jonathan's passing tucked in her wallet, next to photos of Hannah and Jake, next to the faded business card Michelle gave her with the foundation's contact information. Reminders of a Tuesday evening when she chose kindness without knowing the cost or the reward, when she saw a human being in need and helped without calculating the risk. But here's what Rita will tell you if you ask her directly, if you sit down with her during her break and ask about that night and everything that followed. She didn't do it for a reward. She didn't do it expecting recognition or money or media attention or any of the things that followed. She did it because when she looked at Jonathan Reed, she didn't see a wealthy man trying to scam anyone. She saw her own father, who died with dementia years earlier, confused and afraid in his final months, not recognizing his own children, lost in a fog that no one could penetrate. She saw herself years ago, standing at a different register in a different store when her own card declined because she'd miscalculated the balance, and a stranger covered the $7 she was short without asking questions or making her feel ashamed. She saw the human experience we all share, the vulnerability and fear and desperate need to be seen and valued even when we're falling apart, even when we're losing everything that defines us, even when we can't meet the basic expectations of functioning in society. She saw another person who needed help, and she helped. That simple. That profound. That's what makes it so powerful and so challenging. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't a difficult moral calculation. She just saw someone struggling and decided to help, chose compassion over convenience, chose to see a human being instead of an assumption. That's the lesson. Not that kindness always pays off in material ways, though sometimes it does in ways we never expect and can't predict. Not that good deeds always get rewarded, because often they don't, and we help anyway because the reward isn't the point. The lesson is simpler and more fundamental than any of that. We're all Jonathan Reed, standing at a register with trembling hands, terrified that the world will see our weakness and judge us for it, terrified that we'll be dismissed as less than because we're struggling with something beyond our control. We're all Rita Martinez, trying to do right in a world that often makes it hard, trying to see people as human in a society that encourages us to categorize and judge and protect ourselves at all costs. We're all standing in that grocery store line, waiting to see if anyone will choose compassion over convenience, hoping someone sees us as worthy of help even when we don't look like we need it, even when our appearance suggests we should be fine, even when asking for help feels like admitting defeat. And the person who makes that choice, who steps forward when everyone else steps back, who sees humanity when everyone else sees assumptions, should be you. It has to be you. Because if not you, then who? If not now, then when? If not for this stranger in this moment, then for whom and for what are we saving our compassion? The next time you see someone struggling, and you will see someone struggling because life is hard and everyone struggles sometimes, I hope you remember this story. I hope you remember Rita and Jonathan and the moment that changed both their lives and countless others. I hope you pause before judging based on appearance or assumption. I hope you ask yourself what Rita asked herself that Tuesday evening without even realizing she was asking it. What if this person genuinely needs help? What if appearances are deceiving? What if this is my moment to make a difference that ripples out in ways I'll never fully see? What if this small choice I'm about to make matters more than I can possibly imagine? And then I hope you step forward. Even if it costs you something. Even if others judge you for it. Even if you never find out how the story ends. Even if you get scammed sometimes because helping people means occasionally getting taken advantage of, and that's just the price of being decent in a world that isn't always decent back. Step forward anyway. Be the Rita in someone else's story. Be the person who chooses to see humanity over appearance. Be the one who helps when everyone else is finding comfortable reasons not to. Because that's how we build a world worth living in. Not through grand gestures or viral moments or dramatic acts that get attention. But through small acts of unexpected kindness, one person at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time, to see each other as human and worth caring about. That's the story. That's what matters. That's what I hope you carry with you long after you've forgotten the specific details of this video. Not the money or the foundation or the happy ending that wrapped everything up neatly. Just two strangers connecting in a moment of need and proving that grace still exists if we're brave enough to give it, if we're willing to risk being fooled or taken advantage of or looking naive, if we're willing to prioritize compassion over self-protection. So go be brave. Go be kind. Go be the person who steps forward when everyone else steps back. The world needs more Ritas. It desperately needs more people willing to see past appearances to the struggling human being underneath. And you can be one. You can make that choice. Starting right now. Starting with the very next person you meet who needs help, whether they look like they need it or not. That's how everything changes. That's how we build something better. One choice at a time. One act of kindness at a time. One person deciding that compassion matters more than convenience.